that, you could criticize each other and not take it too badly and like really be honest with each other.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we always come at it I'd say the two underlying principles is that there's trust and respect. So if somebody can criticize or say, let's try this, like, we all trust each other's instincts. So if somebody is objecting to something, we don't take it personally. It's more like, oh, what do you hear that might make it better? And we kind of you have to compromise and negotiate those things. But we do it always with respect. It's never like, I've been in bands where there's been difficulties with, somebody, even myself, I've been guilty of, either not respecting somebody else's ideas enough to just say, wait, like and been guilty of, assuming that I'll have a better idea, and you kind of, mature with time and hopefully outgrow that. Yeah. But luckily with this project, I mean, it's all trust and all respect. So,
that sounds great.
That's sort of how it works.
So who's writing the songs? Like, is it one person writing one song, or are most songs collaborative, or is it a combination?
With Distant Cousins?
Yes.
Distant Cousins is definitely a collaboration through and through. I mean, each of us have our strengths that complement the other. So, we're all writing the songs together, and they come in different forms, but sometimes the song will be more fleshed out on the production side, where, maybe I'll bring in something that has a really, established feel, and even maybe a melody or something like that. But oftentimes it's the other way, where David and Dove also can produce, so they'll send around ideas. We have a little WhatsApp of the band, and we send around ideas that are sometimes just a humming idea, or sometimes it's a fully formed song, and we can have feedback on that. And sometimes it's nothing exists, and we start from scratch, the three of us, and start building something. But the good thing is that with our different strengths, like I said, Dove is very strong with lyrics and sitting down with an acoustic and coming up with lyrical ideas. David is the same way, where he comes from that school of having his acoustic guitar, and he's, grown up on records from the 60s and 70s, so he brings that element to it. And I have I come from like the band groove sort of background and have the production under my belt, so it all kind of happens at once when we're doing stuff. But there's all different forms, whether it's the three of us doing it together from scratch, whether it's, David brings in an idea that's pretty fleshed out and we're to say that's awesome and we expand on that, or, someone sends around sort of a scratch demo of something and, it's the song, but, we throw in different ideas. And then, of course, there's the rewrites, changing lyrics, changing structure. So it's still, a collaboration from the get-go, I'd say, through and through.
Amazing. Mm-hmm. So when you get started doing the more production-y things on the computer and whatever, do you have a go-to instrument or sound bit that you use to get the ball rolling, or is it more spur of the moment?
In the software that I use, I could get geeky and say there's some few things that I've been doing recently that are a lot of fun that I would recommend to producers out there. One is a company called Output made this makes this really cool loop synthesizer called Arcade.
I've seen it advertised to me many times on social media.
Yeah. I would look into it because it's one of these things that it helps to just get ideas started, because it has all these built-in kind of loop sounds, but you sort of can play the loops and then tweak them and make them your own very quickly, and it just helps to get things started so you don't have that blank canvas syndrome where you're looking at an empty session with nothing going on. But, I'll usually, if I'm just working from scratch, obviously the first thing to start with is the tempo and the feel. So I'll just start tapping my fingers and then start picking sounds. And then you get those happy accidents where you just wind up on whether it's loops, little elements that you can start throwing in. And then, you start hearing it in your mind's ear first, and you start, it's like a puzzle. You just start throwing them in. And then you can either reach that point where you don't know where else to go, and you could start taking stuff out for your next section and thinning stuff and playing with, just muting tracks, things like that. That's if I'm just writing, and making a track for the track's sake. In a lot of situations, I'll have a commercial or something I'm working on where there's a description of a brief that describes what kind of music a client is looking for, an ad agency is looking for, or there's a theme song that I have to make a custom for a television show. And that's good because it helps take your mind out of it. I mean, you're given all this, all this feedback to work off of. So your mind already starts to go places. And that kind of helps you take, it helps you get out of the mode of what am I writing today? Because it could be anything. So this obviously sets things in motion for style, feel, genre. And then you take it from there.
How specific are those instructions?
Pretty specific. I'd say, in the commercial world, a lot of times they'll send reference tracks of bands that they like, songs they like in particular. Sometimes it's songs they couldn't use. They tried to license for a commercial and they couldn't use, so they want something like that, but they have to obviously keep it original and different, but they want it in the same vein. So you have to try to beat that track. You have to try to beat a track that's like a pop smash on the radio, and you have to try to make something better.
Wow.
So they get specific as like telling you what instruments they don't like, no acoustic guitars or no bells or yes bells. I mean, they get pretty specific in the ad space. And for theme songs too, it's all very specific, because in the world we're in now, they know that composers and producers can make stuff in their bedroom or in their studio and make it sound like a finished track. So it's not like it was in the 80s and 90s where you send in like a demo of what the idea could sound like. Today they're expecting a finished product that sounds like a record, radio-ready record,
Sounds like a lot of pressure.
Yeah. In the beginning, you definitely, I mean, as you do more of it and you get more confident, you kind of learn to read between the lines and do what you think is, the strongest and best work that you can only put your best foot forward. But as you do more of it, like anything, you build a little more confidence.
Sure. So can you take us on a tour through the creation of a typical song? Chronologically, how does it come together? And you could just say Distant Cousin songs, for example.
I'd say something just comes together and it's just an acoustic and a lyric or something like that. So the production hasn't really happened yet. I'll get a WhatsApp alert or something like that for an idea that somebody thought of, and it's a melody or it's a lyric and a hook, and it's just a scratch recording on an iPhone. At that point, we could either get together and flesh out. I usually like to have the full song done in its form in terms of, all the sections, verses, choruses, things like that, because that can help shape the production. So you're not just, making a track and you don't exactly know where it's going to go. You can do it all at once and have an outline of everything that's going to go. But even if that isn't the case and you don't get that, I'll start to hear ideas. I could start to hear ideas based off of the song, even if it's not all finished yet, and start to put a track together so that by the time we get together for our next session with the band, we have like a really good vibe to work off of. That either will help us finish the song and expand and do more top line melody stuff, or whatever. But at least it's something more inspiring to work off of. So I'll put together a track. I'll get started on something before the next session so that the three of us are together, and then we have something that adds some spice to it. I'm not the only one who does that. Sometimes David or Dove will do that too. Well, they'll bring in sort of a scratch idea for the production, some ideas to help kick things off when we're all together. And then we usually will, once we've sort of all decided on the song structure and the lyric and the form, we start to layer the parts, and that falls under the combination of recording, tracking, and producing all happening at the same time, and mixing to make things sound kind of close to done.
You're like mixing as you go along.
Yeah, because you want it to sound good. You just want it to sound the final stage mixing. Obviously, you don't want to interrupt the creative flow of things, so I'm not doing too much heavy mixing. If you just want to keep adding stuff and fill things up, you just do what you can. Just little things, EQing little things out that leave room so it doesn't sound too muddy too quickly, especially if you're layering on a lot of parts.
Yeah.
A little bit of panning, and we'll start to layer on, harmonies, gang vocals, melodies, all that kind of stuff. Maybe we'll do, depending on the song, and, we'll bounce like a rough of that and sit with it for another day or two and keep listening back. And more often than not, you have ideas after listening back to a bounce of a rough of maybe we should shorten this section, take this, shave off a bar here, add a section here, whatever it is, have our critiques, come back, do another sort of revision, digging in. Once that is all done and we like where it's at, it goes to the mixing stage, I would say, where I'll take it home to my home studio and do all the cleaning up, edits, and final mixing, elements to get it to a record worthy song
up
and
to snuff.
have it be exactly, and be ready to go.
Amazing. So what influences your decisions when it comes to structure and arrangements? Because that sounds like something you're thinking about a lot.
I heard an interesting interview where a producer was talking about how, with a song, you're just trying to keep people every, beat to beat without losing them. So the second something feels like it might be losing a listener, and you're the first listener. If it's losing you, it's definitely going to lose people that you're trying to connect it to through your speakers, when you send it out into the world. So I'd say you're really just trying to hold on to people from beginning to end. So anything that gets in the way of that, anything that feels distracting, or anything that feels like it could use a little more or is not getting enough attention, in the most general sense, that's what you're trying to do, is hold the listener in that little journey you're taking them in for 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes. So that influences the structure. If something feels too even, too square, not interesting enough, maybe it's about making an odd measure or sticking in a measure of 2/4, or if the chorus feels like it's being redundant, maybe it's half chorus for the first time, full chorus the second time. Maybe you're adding in too much on the first chorus, so save some of those elements for the second chorus so you get a lift. So it's all about keeping things fresh as you're listening and keeping things dynamic so you're holding the attention of your listener.
I love it. Do you have any templates?
I have a standard template with my basic presets that I like to work with in terms of, I have my shortcuts and I have my tools, but I don't have too many fleshed out templates because I tend to work from scratch each time because I don't want everything to sound, I don't know if I do it intentionally or it's a matter of laziness, but if I was doing some more heavy duty film scoring work that always would require a massive orchestral template, I would go ahead and make one so that I could save time. I have a template for voiceover work that occasionally has some stock plugins that I use on those every single time kind of set up. But for the most part, I don't have fleshed out templates because I fear that I might end up using everything in there when I don't need to. Mm-hmm. So I always like to take it, straight from scratch. I challenge myself to do that. But, I have some presets and sounds that I like that I'll save, but the templates always look the same.
I love it. So you basically will save a bunch of channel strips occasionally, or auxiliary sends.
Yeah,
if
I come
but
up with
not so much the actual instruments.
Well, I'll save patches and stuff like that I'll like that are particular types of sounds that I spent a long time making, and they have a particular quality to them. So I save channel strips and patches and things like that, but I don't save templates where I have 16 tracks ready to go with a bunch of things on them, because when I open that, I don't know necessarily what the song is going to be and what it will need. So I usually like to go with, trying to do my best to restrain myself to only add what's absolutely necessary for a track, because you don't want to fall into the trap of your tracks all having the exact same plugins and the exact same instruments on them just because they're there. And I think psychologically, if you have everything in front of you a certain way, you'll always end up, we always default to the familiar things and familiar practices. So the challenge is to try to stay fresh and try to start from scratch for that reason. That's why I do it. I started using Ableton Live also as a recent challenge to myself to get out of the Logic Pro box that I've been in for a long time, which is great. I find Logic to be still the best, but Ableton has features in it that I think are really interesting. So either way, just to keep things fresh and creative and cool and fun.
Love it. And is there anything else that you do to work faster or get inspired quicker?
To work faster, I would say shortcut keys. Always keep those, I keep expanding on that. I mean, in Logic, you can customize all your shortcut keys, but I try, and I don't want to move the mouse as much as possible. I like to, that's one thing that is helpful.
It saves so much time and helps your body.
Yeah, it saves time. I don't want to move around too much. I like the shortcut keys. And lately, I've been trying to get into thinking about more hardware that can control things, so I don't have to be looking at the keyboard or the screen as much. I don't have those things yet, but, in using Ableton, I was considering maybe at some point getting Ableton Push so that I could, a goal of mine is to be able to create and produce in a more organic, live sort of way, as opposed to plugging in little pieces or sequencing or doing those things where I want to keep things going. I think it's, more enjoyable to do it that way, and you get a more organic production overall when it feels good off the fly. So that's another hill for me to climb, is to really get into Ableton more deeply and get some hardware that goes